Hey, it's Olympia D from 105.3 R&B and also Realtor for Family Realty. Here to talk to you about something that's very passionate to me, and it's home ownership. And, in today's climate, it's really hard for buyers to purchase homes, and it's even harder for minorities. So here to talk to us about what is being done to close that home ownership gap, we have Miss Julie Porter. She is the president of DreamKey Partners. Hey, Julie.
Hi.
All right. And we also have Fred Dodson Jr., COO and EVP of Real Estate Development and DreamKey Partners. How are you doing, Fred?
Doing well, thank you.
Awesome. And Mr. Shawn Heath, he is the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services for the City of Charlotte. Hi, Shawn.
Hello, good to see you.
How is everyone doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Well, awesome. So let's get straight to it. Shawn, talk to us. Why is home ownership so beneficial for families?
Thank you, Olympia. I think that's a great opening question. Certainly a number of benefits. I think that maybe the most obvious would be financial benefits of home ownership. If you think about owning a home is really a wonderful opportunity for a family to have a long-term investment where they're building equity, oftentimes in an appreciating asset, and this can be beneficial to intergenerational wealth, certainly. But I think also it's important to think about some of the more kind of social benefits and thinking of it at the household level in terms of the value of the stability and peace of mind and pride of ownership. And those are things that really should never be discounted. They're incredibly important to the fabric of a community, and strong households lead to strong communities, and strong communities lead to strong cities. So I think there's really a range of benefits, both at the household level and frankly across an entire community.
I would have to agree with you. When you have a very strong household, you produce much stronger kids. And Julie, I would like for you to talk to us about this term BIPOC. What is BIPOC home ownership, and how does it fit into our conversation today?
Yeah, just to build a little bit on what, Shawn said, we're focused on home ownership because it is the primary, like Shawn said, the primary wealth generator for families. BIPOC homeownership refers to homeownership by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And it may be used interchangeably, like with minority homeownership. People have heard about that, of course. It's a term, it's been around for a few years, but it may not be familiar to everyone. Our intention at DreamKey is to bring awareness to broader racial injustices. And for today's conversation, specifically BIPOC homeownership disparities. And, the disparities are really big, and they need to be, shown a light on, I guess, is what I would say. On a national basis, just think about this. In 1960, 38% of Black families owned their home, compared to 65% of white families. It's a 27-point gap.
Right.
Today, the gap is even bigger, with 72% of white families owning their home compared to 43% of Black families. That's a 29-point gap. The Fair Housing Act that was passed in 1968, and it was really supposed to end housing discrimination and equal the playing field. However, it just didn't. The simple act of outline discrimination didn't end it. And we saw then, we still see now, continued disparities in mortgage lending in BIPOC communities. I just saw a story just last week on a Black family whose house appraised at $472,000. They were turned down to refi their loan or their home because, they didn't have enough value in it. But when a white friend stepped in and put in their pictures and their decorations, the same house reappraised at $750,000.
Wow.
That's a huge difference. That's real money for that family. And they can use that, like as Shawn said, for retirement, or maybe they can borrow against it for their children's education. So there's just huge stakes here.
Right. And Fred, what would you like to add to that conversation as well?
Well, I think that the one thing that we need to talk about when it comes to the disparities that Julie mentioned is just the historical perspective and the history and how we got here. Because when you think about the gaps particularly between Black families and white families, it really goes back to the mid 1900s and the policies that were put in place at that time. Primarily by the federal government. Those policies have been labeled redlining, where African American neighborhoods were targeted, and they were it was made very difficult for banks to make loans to those communities and the people who lived in those communities.
Right.
That's why DreamKey is really concentrating our efforts on in BIPOC communities, and for providing mortgages to BIPOC, hopefully for BIPOC homeowners, is to try to address the historic barriers that were put in place and just the impacts of that decades later. It's going to take us a long time to recover from that, but we need to focus on that now and for the foreseeable future.
Exactly. And Fred, you talked about some policies. Julie, what are some of the policy changes that would help to advance BIPOC homeownership right here in Charlotte?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few policy changes that could help on a federal level. One of the things that we're advocating for is passage of the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. It's a federal tax credit that acts very similar to how most of our apartments are built, like with the low-income housing tax credit. But this, basically the tax incentive would go to increase the subsidy for new construction or rehab of single-family homes. And it would just help us and others bring down the cost of homes in Charlotte for first-time home buyers, low and moderate income home buyers. We would also like to see, better access to affordable home mortgage loans. Unfortunately, we continue to see disparities in lending here in Charlotte, similar to those seen nationally. Many banks have special programs for first-time home buyers. We'd like to see those more aggressive to meet the current need.
Definitely. And I know with working with some of our buyers, they need those more aggressive lending opportunities to help them get into the homes that, they're trying their best to purchase. And could you also talk to us about why BIPOC homeownership in Charlotte, how it compares to the national statistics?
Sure. We did a study with UNC Charlotte Urban Institute and found that 75% of white households own their home here in Charlotte. Compared to a little over 42% of Black households and 53% of Hispanic households. So the gap is larger. That's a 33-point gap between white and Black households. So not great news. The other thing I would probably mention is that BIPOC households really are only a small percentage of the home loans that are made. Our county is about 50% BIPOC. But total home loan originations account for only about 26%.
Right.
Maybe what's even more concerning, Olympia, is the turn down rate, the denial rate for Black and Hispanic applicants. It's about 70 to 100% higher than white applicants.
And we talked about this gap. Julie, you mentioned the gap. Fred, can you talk to us? What is driving this gap with BIPOC home ownership?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to what I mentioned before. It's just the historic disadvantages for, and I can point directly to African American home buyers, but it's also impacts the others that we mentioned as well. When you have such wealth inequality, and you have policies that were put in place, not just for a short period of time, but for decades. You had, policies such as redlining put in place to prevent African Americans from purchasing homes and other people of color from purchasing homes. Then it's going to take us a while, as we move away from such policies, as we certainly have. It's going to take a while for the correction to happen, and for people to gain the generational wealth. It's not just that homeowner who buys a house, for the first time. We need to look at this from a generational perspective. If your family was able to buy their first home 100 years ago, then that set in motion a chain of events that help generations later. Being able to pass on the equity and the wealth in that home and the ownership of that property, that has a rippling effects that impacts generations. And so If you're just buying your first home now and you're in your family, then it's going to take a while for that to impact you for the long term and your family for the long term. So we got to always keep that in mind.
Right. And Shawn, what do you think is driving this gap in BIPOC homeownership as well?
I would certainly agree with Fred's comments. And I mean, Charlotte is not unlike many urban areas across the country. If you look at where our most distressed communities are, and you see there's such a high concentration of minority households in those communities, and really that's only been intensified by the pandemic. And then you overlay that with the fact that Charlotte is an attractive city that many people want to come to live, work, and play. So we have a tremendous supply issue on the housing front. And when you look at the increase in housing prices here in the city of Charlotte, it's staggering. In just comparing over the last 12 months or so, we've seen over a 15% increase in the median sales price for new homes, which are now approaching $400,000. Just an incredible number. So it's just a real challenge for this market right now, not unlike other communities. And when you take into account other factors like the emergence of corporate investors, not really across the country, but in certain markets, and Charlotte being one of them, and these corporate investors have certain advantages that really make it a challenge for local households, especially first-time homebuyers in that low and medium income level, to really compete. Mm-hmm. So all of these variables rolled in, put us in a situation now where we're just tremendously challenged associated with BIPOC homeownership.
Now, we talked about the problems, but what do you think is the solution, Shawn?
Thank you for that follow-up question. Certainly. I think there are a range of things that the city, with our partners like DreamKey, are very invested in, literally and figuratively, but more needs to be done. And I would point to 3 or 4 specific areas. One, of course, would be a focus on increasing the supply of affordable housing. And that's an area where I think Charlotte has a strong record, and there's a demonstration of a real commitment by both the public and private sector to put real money into support for gap funding in order to enable the economics for affordable housing to pencil out. With our Housing Trust Fund in particular, where the city of Charlotte a few years ago increased our every other year bond from $15 million to $50 million, from $15 million to $50 million, in concert with the private sector stepping up to also inject $50 million in resources. We're doing more with our Housing Trust Fund to support homeownership than we had previously. And we also have other federal funding sources that we're relying on as well. So leveraging resources in order to increase the access, or really to increase the supply of affordable housing, is certainly one incredibly important area. And there are a lot of other things that I think could be done as well. One would be anything in the realm of how do we better position households to be ready for homeownership? And this is something that DreamKey will have some commentary on. It can be anything from financial literacy, for example, to really help individuals understand, how do I ensure that I have the savings and credit history to position my household to be ready for homeownership opportunity? That's incredibly important. I would also point to very specific things that the city of Charlotte, in partnership with DreamKey, are doing in terms of direct financial assistance to households, including our House Charlotte program, which is providing up to $30,000 in assistance, which can either be used for down payments or for interest rate buy downs. It's really helping to remove what can be tremendous impediments for a first-time home buyer through a deferred zero interest loan product. And then the last thing that I would mention in terms of the various levers that can be relied on as solutions would be efforts by the city of Charlotte and other local partners to really help households increase their earnings power. So what are the things that can be done through additional jobs training and workforce development and the creation of good paying jobs to help households that are at 30% AMI grow to 50% AMI, and households that are at 50% AMI to grow to 80% AMI, and help households that are currently renting really be in a good financial position to pursue home ownership. So those would be a few things that I would shine a light on, and we're not flat-footed in these areas, and with partners like DreamKey, I think we're positioned to really move the needle on these things.
Exactly. And one of the things that you talked about, Shawn, was the supplies. Even as a realtor, we see the supplies, or we call it the inventory, being low. Fred, I would like to know from you, what can be done with the supply and demand to help find a solution to narrow this home ownership gap?
Yeah. I think what we're seeing nationwide, and not just in Charlotte, is that there's a lack of homes for first-time home buyers to buy. One of the reasons why this is happening in Charlotte and elsewhere is that we have corporate buyers who are buying those homes. I think I saw one statistic where 30% of the homes under a certain price point, which would typically be homes bought by first-time home buyers, were bought by corporate investors who are buying these homes and converting them, from home ownership to rental housing. Now, I'm not trying to disparage renters, but today we're talking about home ownership and the importance of home ownership. So, I think that is one of the issues that we're dealing with now. And when it comes to policies, I think it would be good, and I don't know exactly what this would look like, is to put in place policies that would discourage corporate investors from buying homes in such large numbers in cities like Charlotte, but also to provide funding for organizations like DreamKey to acquire those homes, from those investors, do rehab, and then put them back on the market for home ownership. I think that is one way that we can deal with that and address this issue, and hopefully we can head in that direction. But right now, there's really very few homes available for first-time home buyers to buy.
And Julie, the one thing that I absolutely love about DreamKey Partners is that you guys aim to help families get ready for a mortgage. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, in addition to the program that Shawn talked about, House Charlotte, that actually provides a down payment assistance for those who don't think that they're mortgage ready. DreamKey does have programs aimed at like financial literacy and budgeting and credit, as well as home buyer education. So we can pair people with HUD certified housing counselors who can work with them until they're purchase ready. And then we also administer the state's down payment assistance program. We can pair that with House Charlotte. And we have a program specific to Hispanic homebuyers where they can access additional down payment assistance. So you can really combine quite a few different down payment assistance programs here at DreamKey in order to get substantial down payment. Now, our housing counselors, they will work with people 2 to 3 years. If they aren't mortgage ready when they come in, we will work with them through their entire journey. Make sure that they have someone to work with them along the way. So at the end, they're able to purchase that home. So I do think that those programs are important. I hope people start to tap into those because through the pandemic, it's been a little bit difficult, I think, for people to access them, even though they're all online now. I just want to make sure people are aware of them.
Right. And Julie, can you tell us what's next?
Well, for us, I mean, we have actually really jumped up on our construction of single family homes. So we're building duplexes. I think we're building 22 duplexes right now in the Druid Hills neighborhood. Those are all going to be affordable for first-time home buyers.
Awesome.
We're getting ready to partner with Crossroads CDC to build some single family homes in Greer Heights. We have single family homes under construction right now at Avalon and Coolwood neighborhoods. So there's quite a bit of new construction that we're trying to amp up because we do realize that there's a shortage of inventory in that price range. And I think what also is next is we'd like to see a program that when a bank does turn somebody down for a mortgage loan, that they are immediately referred to an agency like DreamKey so we can start working with family on whatever might be holding them back. We understand people have credit issues, but come to us and we can start working on those.
And that's a great thing. And Julie, can you tell people where they can find DreamKey Partners? How can they get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, our website is dreamkeypartners.org. That's probably the easiest starting point just because you can go ahead and sign up for classes there. And just one more reminder, rents are rising really fast. And compared to a mortgage, that payment that payment stays pretty much the same, for 30 years. So homeownership really might be the right answer for people right now.
Exactly. Awesome. And, it's great to know that there are resources to help families buy a home. And Julie, we just want to say thank you to you. Julie is the president of DreamKey Partners. Also, we would like to say thank you to Fred Dodson Jr., the COO and EVP of Real Estate Development and DreamKey Partners, and also Shawn Heath, the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services for the City of Charlotte. Thank you guys so much for sharing your information today. I'm sure someone was listening, someone was watching, and they learned a lot of information about how they can become a homeowner. So thank you guys so much for the information that you shared.
Absolutely.
All right. I am Olympia D, 105.3 R&B, and also Realtor with Family Realty. Thank you so much for joining us today. And like I stated before, hopefully you learned something today that can help you along your path to home ownership. And we will be back with more of these educational forums to help you along your journey. Okay. Again, Olympia D, 105.3 R&B, and also Realtor for Family Realty. Thank you.